Welcome, everybody, to the June 5th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting. Please silence your cell phones, pagers, and other electronic communication devices. And agendas and speaker request forms are located at the back of the chambers. The commission utilizes speaker request forms. If you'd like to speak on an item, please complete a speaker request form, and they're located at the bookshelf in the back of the chambers, and return to Geraldine to turn into us. And she's at your left of the dais. This one will call the meeting to order, and I'd ask Commissioner Ron Roskinek to do the moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Roskinek. Next, we want to recognize our new employees. As you all came in a little bit early and we all got to meet you a little bit, we want to welcome you to Pennington County. It's a great place to work. We're glad you chose to work here, and we want to really welcome you with open arms. Is there any other comments from the commission?
Just a pleasure to meet him.
Pleasure to meet them. Welcome to Pennington County as our employees.
Thank you for joining our team. Pennington County is a good place to work. You enjoy your staff and your people that work here, and we appreciate them very much. Thank you.
And don't forget their snacks at the end of or they took them out now, didn't they?
And eat food.
But yes, we really want to welcome you and appreciate you choosing Pennington County for your place of employment. Thank you. With that, we will move to the consent agenda. And I'll recognize Commission Manager Holly Hennies.
Mr. Chair, we need to approve the agenda.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. I'd look for a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
With the removal of item 19, please,
Yes,
Commissioners.
With the removal of item 19.
With the removal of item 19.
It's been moved by Roskinek, seconded by Drews to approve the agenda with the removal of item 19. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. I got sidetracked with the new employees. That's how important you guys are. Ms. Holly Ennis.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. Holly Hayes, Commission Manager. For public notice, the Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. Today's consent agenda contains the following items. Approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of May 21st, 2024. Number 7 is to approve the renewals of the following retail on-off sale malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine licenses and to release the licenses upon a payment of appropriate property taxes. Bear Country USA Inc., Black Elk Resort, and O'Malley's Casino. Number 8 is approval of the vouchers in the amount of $285,178. Number 9 is to acknowledge the notice of intent to conduct a raffle from the Silver City Volunteer Fire Department. Number 10 is to acknowledge the notice of intent to conduct a raffle by the Battle Creek Fire Association. Number 11 is to approve the revised policy and procedure for the consideration of vouchers as presented. Number 12, to approve the abatement application for tax year 2023 for Timothy Stewin Ministries, parcel 1282, in the amount of $8,237.18. And finally, number 13 is to approve the submission of the Reducing Racial and Ethnic Disparities Sub-Grant application to the South Dakota Department of Corrections.
Thank you, Holly. At this time, is there any members of the public who wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, at this time, is there any commissioners who wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Moved by Drews,
Second.
second by Hadcock. Any further discussion? Hear none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, that brings us up to our regular agenda items, and I'll recognize Cindy Moeller, the auditor.
Good morning, Commissioners. Cindy Moeller, Pennington County Auditor. The first item we have is a request for a special retail on-sale malt beverage, special retail on-off-sale wine retailer license, and a special on-sale license for the Performing Arts Center of Rapid City for an event that they're holding on June 28th.
Is there any questions for Cindy? We go back to the board.
I'd move to approve the special retail on sale malt beverage license, special retail on off sale wine retailer's license, and special on sale license for the Performing Arts Center of Rapid City.
Second.
It's been moved by Drews and seconded by Lassiter. Do we need the time and date included on that?
That was Roskinick, wasn't it?
Yes, if
I
we could
second.
include that
Yeah, I
time
thought
and
it
date of
sounded
that
like-
special
That's fine.
license, that would be
That's fine
great.
with me.
Okay,
Include it.
yeah. So it also includes the PACRA pop-up party fundraiser, 5 PM to 10:30 PM on the 28th of 2024. So we had a motion by Drews and a seconded by Lassiter. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Items B.
A few transfers here. So we have a transfer from Horse Creek Resort to Horse Creek Trading Post LLC, High Country Guest Ranch, the High Country Guest Ranch under new ownership. No Bad Days Tap Wagon to No Bad Days Tap Wagon, again, an ownership change. And then for the retail on sale liquor license with Sunday sales, Horse Creek to Horse Creek Trading LLC, Trading Post LLC, excuse me. No Bad Days Tap Wagon under new ownership. We would ask for approval of those licenses, transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Do we need those all read in to approve transfer of the following licenses? Or is that item 5?
Probably be best to have it in the record.
Okay. We'll take them all up at once. Deb, did you want to read those, please?
Sure.
It's number 5, yeah.
I'll read my other papers. So we're on number 14A.
On the next page under 5, I think you need,
B. Transfer of the retail on-off malt and South Dakota Farm License Horse Creek Resort. Are you saying those ones? Sorry, I was reading my papers, Lloyd, when I approved it. What number are you on?
I think the motions are on under 5. Am I correct, or is that separate?
You could do one motion for all of the transfers if you're approving them.
Okay.
So it's 14B is what you're
So
saying?
you did it. So it was moved by Hadcock, and who was the second?
Travis.
And second by Travis. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now we get to the,
Sorry. Thank you.
item 15 from Buildings and Grounds. And this is for information only.
Morning, Commissioners. Kevin Burton, Construction Manager. So we're looking at what we have for the Capital Project Fund. The meetings prior, I was requested to bring forth updated budget information. So here's what we have. These are all based on current numbers, based on the latest bid results and the current information from the auditor on what's available in that project fund. So from bond proceeds and other cash availability, we had $47,800,000 $89,173. And the way that's divided is this is design and A&E fees. This is what we have received for 900 Concourse is the base bid. This was for the buildings and grounds shop. This is for the, there's an approach and the network IT and all of the items over here are labeled. When we get to this column here, and this is the public defenders and operations building at 14 St. Joe. And these are projected as the remodel costs for the cab and this existing administration building and the public safety building once we complete this project and move people out. So the way that breaks down into a spreadsheet is here. These are also color coordinated to the pie chart. So the 900 Concourse building, which is the new administration building, the base bid came in at $5,600,000. The B&G building was $815,000. The parking lot, the B&G building, the parking lot, and the second approach were all bid alternates. So any of these can or cannot be accepted. The B&G building we feel is pretty important because it holds the plow and the landscaping equipment, storage for filters and all of that kind of stuff out there. The parking lot repairs, this came in about half of what our budget was for that, or what the engineer's estimate was. So that's a pretty good price for repairing that back parking lot. And the approach came in less expensive as well. The approach allows people to go out of the parking lot through two exits instead of just one. There's been some conversation about just leaving it as one. It can create congestion at other places. So are we just deferring traffic to a different intersection rather than allowing them out of our parking lot? So these can be voted on to be accepted or not accepted. We propose that we accept the B&G shop and the approach for sure. And we'd like to see the parking lot included in that as well, because we're not sure where buildings and grounds funds. It may be several years before we can afford to do that, and the cost could escalate because we're doing it in pieces and parts rather than having all of the paving equipment out there already doing the approach and the landscape or the excavation for the shop. So those are some points to consider. And then additional needs that we need out there, network and IT. This is connecting to our main servers down at this building through satellite. And then all of the additional cameras and all of those kind of things that are needed out at the new building. We estimate that at $620,000. FF&E, as we move out there, they need, we've reused everything we can from the existing building. And then to supplement the rest of it, $620,000. The audiovisual equipment for the chambers, the shared conference rooms, the initial quote came in at $500,000. We're looking at means to reduce that cost. And then design services include architectural engineering, soil analysis, all of that is all wrapped up into all of the different design services that happened out there. So it gives us a grand total of $9 million. For the PDO building, we were authorized discretionary spending of $300,000. It's broke down to see how that was spent. We spent that whole amount. A lot of these are building-wide systems, so the HVAC controls, the county network, and the fire panel. Those all address the entire building. We were also awarded another $300,000 for discretionary spending to finish other things within there, and that totaled to $80,000. So we've come in well below this. We probably still have a little bit to spend out of that, but it'd be minimal. And then we received bids for the west side of the building. That'll be the new home of the public defender. Construction costs came in at $446,300. That was from Mac Construction. We put a contingency in there to make sure that we have cover any unforeseen conditions. We estimate FF&E as $125,000 and access control for that half of the building at $52,000. So those items are in red because we don't have fixed bids for those yet. So those totaled to the $1,025,000 up here. And then the Justice Center, which is what this building will become, we estimate about $425,000 off the get-go to, once the administrative offices move out, to create a secure entryway for records, warrants, and civil for the law enforcement divisions moving over here. And then the public safety building will receive some finishes to improve those vacated spaces so that the enforcement divisions can move into those. So that, from our total of the 47 million, brings us down to 37 million. This is what we have remaining in our budget to utilize towards the jail. Our initial budget estimates for the jail were between 28 and 32 million. So this gives us a little bit of buffer in there. Originally, when BKV presented all of the items, that's what this chart shows. Sorry, I'm trying to see how to make it bigger for the audience. The new administration building for the construction cost was between 5 and 7.8, and we were at 6.5 for the building and the two options that we were highly recommending. So it falls within the budget that they had projected here. For the cab remodel for the new public safety building, so for Justice Center, let's change names a little bit. That was their projected budget. Right now, we're only looking at $450,000, and this as $250,000 because we reduced the scope of those buildings and we're not moving all of that over. So the B&G building, the initial budget projection was 1.4 to 2.3, and as I just showed, we're right at $1 million, just over $1 million for that remodel. And then for the jail, they were projecting 50 to 61 million. We reduced that scope to get us within budget. So we're building just the one-story jail. And so that's where we were falling, and that's within our budget that we have currently. So we've been working real hard with BKV and their projections to try to stay within all of that.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lester,
if he's done, I just want to ask a couple of questions.
are you done?
I've got one more page. So when we started looking at all of the items that BKV presented to us, we were looking at the public safety building, and that building is a shared expense with Rapid City. So back in July of 16 of 22, we had put together a quick estimate to take to Rapid City Council, depending on what level of remodel that they intend to do on the public safety building. So, and that's when it gets completely vacated over here. I mean, this is back in 22, so this was quite a while ago. And this is the only budget we had ever put together to discuss with the city on moving any switching responsibilities or any of that. So these would all be the shared cost. So the city, depending on the scope of the work or any of that, these were just some budget presentations to put together, say, this is a thought. It all depends on what route you want to go and how much remodeling we're actually going to do. So this was just giving them a very broad range of numbers and then how it would break out over several years of remodel. So I just wanted to bring that up for the historical record, that this is the only thing we ever presented to the city. And that's where that's at. And that's the end of my slideshow. So,
Okay.
stand
Mr.
for any
Ross.
questions?
Mr. Chair, thanks. So Kevin, I was at the building meeting and I saw your presentation there. We kind of talked through some stuff. Maybe I'm just missing something on this sheet and I'm just going to show that one so you can pull it up. I don't know what, I think you had it as updated. You're showing remaining 37 million for the jail, and I just want to make sure that I'm following the numbers here. That's based off a total of 47,889, 173. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm looking at this. The numbers that I see here, if I take the 5.6 million for the estimated concourse construction, but if you bring it down to the 9 million, I'm guessing that's if we go high on it, that's 9 million minus the 1 million for the PDO all phases, that's already at 10 million there. And then if you take the 675, that's almost 11 million, but that doesn't minus off of 44 to equal 37. So I guess the math is not lining up for me. So I'm just wondering, is there a better way to present this? And it's kind of the reason why I asked the question last meeting is we've got to see a clear path and understanding, because if I was to look at this and see the 5.6 million on the concourse construction, then I'd see 6.7 million, 9 million, and not understand the whole the whole process of this as the public.
Mhm.
This looks like we're spending 12, 13, 14, 19. I mean, it looks like we're already spending almost 20 million just on this, the way the numbers are lining up without clear direction on what you're trying to present to us. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And that's kind of what I was getting at last meeting. It has to be clear and concise so that we can see where the money's at, where it's going, and what's obligated. Because this, you can get your numbers all confused, and you're like, well, why are you telling me we got 37 when I can calculate already 11 million is coming off, and 11 million minus 44 million is not 37, it's 33. That's just even numbers. So I guess that's the reason why I'm bringing this to attention, because this is for the public to see. We don't want the public to be confused. We want everyone to see all the numbers in the right categories. If you don't.
Yep. So all of these numbers total down to right here. All of these numbers total up to right here. So you've got 9 million, 1 million, and then this 775,000 that add in. Those are the only four numbers that are subtracted from the 47 million. And I
Gotcha.
can see that's about $1 million discrepancy, just off the top of my head. But yeah,
You see, that looks like 10 million. So again, that's 9 million and the 1 million, that's a 10 million.
47 minus 9 is 38, minus another million is 37, minus 750,000 is the 800 and some thousand that gets knocked off. So the numbers actually do work out.
But when you total down and then you total up, that can throw people for a curveball. Because I'm sitting here looking at some of these numbers and I'm like, I'm not following. I know what we've talked about, but I'm like, I'm not following you how you laid it out here, I
Well,
guess.
Commissioner, if I could step in real quick too. I heard you reference the 44 million. That's just the bond, but we also have a cash balance in there of 3.7 million. So if you look at the memo and you take that 47,889 number and then you reduce, you subtract these costs on another spreadsheet, you get down to that 37,133.
And Commissioner Lasker, I understand what you're saying. I was reviewing that yesterday morning and went, oh, yeah, that's adding up. This is adding down. And
I'm just pointing out, if I can be confused on it and I was in the meeting, then, we might need to figure out a way to make it more clear.
yeah, at that point, it was too late to try to update the board packet. So happy to explain that here. And thanks for bringing that up. But yeah, at 37,700,000 some thousand, this comes out to the 37,100,000. That's on the other page. This pie chart is directly pulled from this Excel spreadsheet. So, yep, I can understand how that's confusing. So it's basically these three totals that total up to here. And then all of these total down. So it's these two numbers and these two numbers here. that gets subtracted from that 47,887,000.
Chair.
Are you done, Travis?
I'm done.
Ms. Hancock?
Okay, so I must be missing something because the current total bond proceeds of ARPA with funds was 52,078 before. Rapid Valley Water, approximately gift 5 million, running total 47,078,093. Bank purchase parking lots took out 5 million, running total 42 million. Even if you added the 3 million, which was the old bond money that was left, does not add up to 47 million. It adds up to 40, almost 46. So on these running totals that you have, here's the problem with having a running total, Kevin. And I talked to be fair, I talked to Mr. Davis on some of the numbers and seeing if he could get some of the numbers for us. There's ARPA funds, there's bond funds, there's building and ground funds, there's accumulative building funds, and then there's a accumulative building reserve. I'd like to see where all those numbers are. When you're taking away totals, I'd like to see where you're getting all the money from. This is a briefing on this because it's not adding up with what you had before. I know the numbers can change, but with the ARPA, the bond, and the buildings and grounds, I'd like to know how much is buildings and grounds and how much you've used of it for some of these buildings. Then here's an issue. Okay, so now we have all the buildings. You have to put people in those buildings. You have to pay for the utilities. You have to pay for all that. It's coming out of Mr. Davis's budget. All of those extra costs is coming out of Mr. Davis's buildings and ground director budget. What's his budget going to look like with 2 new buildings? How much are we willing to give him in order for him to maintain already $398 million worth of buildings? Now you're telling me on this budgeting, these numbers, these haven't even included all that. That's what I was saying. When you're buying buildings, you got to include everything. You got to include the running costs of everything because that never stops. So again, what is the ARPA fund? How much did we get? How much did we spend? How much did we give to the buildings? How much is left? You say 47 million. By this chart right here that I'm looking at, it says 42,078. And then I don't know if they added or minus the 3,787,000. I don't know if that's in there. I didn't have time to ask Cindy all this because, of course, yesterday was a busy day. So the numbers aren't adding up, Kevin, with what you have on your chart. And I'm not trying to be facetious. It's just a public safety building you still have to do, a justice center you still have to do. You have to do projects for buildings and grounds. You guys only have $800,000. Are you guys using the cumulative building? Have you used any of this for this project? I haven't seen any of that. It's not, to me, I'll just say it's not that hard. How much money do you have? And how much are you going to have at the end? And then when he does his budgets and he does stuff, all that's going to add more to it. So go ahead,
And if I
Mr.
may
Davis.
speak for a minute, yeah, what this presentation was, is just what we have in the bond proceed money, the cash, and then that total capital fund balance that you see there on the memo.
Right.
And this is directly from Cindy. She provided us an updated Excel spreadsheet on this last week or the week prior. So that 47,889 is what we have in there to spend on these capital projects. Now, what we didn't prepare for this presentation was a budget overview of B&G and those additional utilities and operating costs. Obviously, that is something that will have to be addressed.
Right.
But that's not what this was focused on. This is just what we're using the bond money for and those capital projects and what they're being utilized.
And I get that, Mr. Davis, but if you look at it, 7.720 plus the 1.74 just for the additional building needs, those aren't even bid alternates, right?
What are we
I keep
looking
hearing
at?
we only spent 7 something. No, you're way past that when you add 6.720 and then you add additional building needs. These aren't wants, these are needs. Network IT equipment, cubicle storage, tear down, audio visual. And the design's already cost you that 600. That's if you don't change anything. So if you take even the design out, you're way past the 7 million you said you're going to spend on the project. It's 8-something. So, you
I,
have, to be fair, sir, Mr. Davis, you haven't been in, Kevin has. So Kevin's been running the numbers, and to me, on this point, the numbers aren't matching up with what the totals you have left. Travis is right. Once you start adding some of the stuff, and that's if all the bids and everything come out. And do you have any other remodel that needs to be done or unforeseen costs? Because you don't have that built in. Like I said, anything you take from this budget, it takes away from the jail. So I'll just tell you, the numbers for me, this isn't a spreadsheet. This is confusing. If a public had to read this, I don't think they could understand it. I don't know what highs and lows are, but I don't understand what this is either, to be fair. Because I just had another project manager look at it and he didn't understand it. So, um, what does highs on jail 36, low 51? What is the soft cost and hard cost? Is that a guesstimate? I understand that, but again, if I'm running a department, I want to know all the money I have, because if I'm going to buildings and grounds and going, okay, guys, we spent the ARPA, we spent the bond, we have buildings and grounds money, I only have 630 left. I have to do this, this, and this. I have a cumulative building. Last I heard it was 1 point something, and then you have the reserve of that, what is left. So then tell me, if you have any unforeseen costs, where does it come from? That's what I'm saying. Does it come from the jail, or do we do less on the buildings? Because again, that's what happened on these buildings. When we didn't have enough money or ran out of money, we can't do that with the jail. He can't do less than when he already, what he needs is what he needs. His is not a want, his is a need. So, at this point, we have to move forward. I understand that. I would move forward on the county administration. I voted for that. The rest, I think, we need, after we get all the numbers for that, we need to see how much we have left with that. That's why I said we didn't need to move on with all the other buildings right away. The county administration, the old one, we already know it's moving into, the state's attorney, but that was supposed to be state's attorney. This was supposed to also be the other, public safety building at the time. So now we don't have the funds to do that, so we're just gonna make a, state's attorney's office. So to me, it's, I'll just tell you, trying to figure all this out as a commissioner and looking at the budgets, I haven't figured it out yet, and I've gotten a lot of help from people and they can't figure it out. So, Mr. Davis, in your defense, you're coming into all this and you're trying to figure out, and I'm gonna commend you for this because it's your job. But, yeah, I'll be having more meetings with you, I already know, so we can figure this out. And I am a solution finder, I'm not trying to just go after somebody. I really want to figure this out because you know what? This is what the taxpayers have to pay for, and we got to figure it out. We can't find out that later we have to do less than we didn't have enough money. Because we also, with these buildings, we have wages, we have other stuff we have to take care of. So anything you spend today on buildings is also taken away from some of that other that you need in your departments for wages and other stuff. So that's my concern. So. And again, Kevin, these numbers for me, aren't adding up from what they were before until I can see all the numbers and make sure they're accurate. But I also told Mr. Davis I would get with him after this. And we could try to run through those numbers and find out from Cindy, how much he has left because I'm worried about his budget. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any further comments? This is for informational.
No, everything prior to this point was speculation.
Yeah.
It was trying to make a best guess conservatively on what we had available and what we could do within those parameters, both on a high and a low. It all depended on the design process and what we ended up with as an end result. This is the end result. These are hard bid items for the majority of the projects. The other things are also estimated, most likely on the high side, so that we can come in with budget savings. And that can all be applied to the jail. So,
Okay, thank you. Next, that'll bring us on to item B, which is the bid award for the PDO building renovation.
So the right page. Yes, we received 2 bids for that. We were running that as the general contractor, asking for sub bids. We ended up getting 2 general contractors that proposed all of the elements on that. Am I on the right? Yep. Okay. So Mac Construction came in.
You are right here. I can take over. Mac Construction, we received 2 bids for that, for the west side of the PDO building. Mac Construction came in at $446,300. Seco had a total price of $497,000 without any mechanical work. And you can see on this memo, it's broken down from what we budgeted at that 1.625. There's a potential of $778,000 in, that's perceived savings, if you will. So we are requesting the award to MAC for that project. And Kevin and I will work to coordinate that project, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there any questions for
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lester?
So I appreciate the work to get this way below that $1.6 million. That's what I'm understanding. It's going to be $778,000. What was the biggest factor in that reduction?
Doing a lot of the stuff ourselves on the west side, or on the east side. That was done by the discretionary spending through B&G staff. I think we reduced a lot of the scope there. We're also going to work with Mac Construction to see if we've got some value engineering on some of the items that they've put forth on their bid for the west side. I've opened a discussion dialogue with them to see if there's some areas that we could look at. HVAC came in at $50,000. That's driving a lot of the high construction costs around this area right now. And if that's something that we may be able to address in-house, then maybe we can remove that $50,000 from that bid and find further savings. So we're still looking at all the value engineering options within that to try to even reduce that further.
Yeah, we looked at every aspect as far as B&G doing some of the work. And like Kevin had mentioned, on the east side of the building, our guys did a lot of that, and then when we started to look at the west side of the building, it was just determined that it was too much for the B&G team to take on. And so that's why we went out, request for bid, and Kevin had said, there may be potential savings with HVAC there too. So this number might even reduce even more because we will be able to do some of it in-house, so.
And then one other quick factor is that we worked with the Public Defender's Office in the design of that side because they're the ones that will be occupying it. And they've been very good at leaving existing finishes and areas untouched and doing mild modifications to the second floor, very minimal on the first floor, and then trying to keep the third floor to a minimum. But that's where the majority of the cost is up on the third floor.
Mr. Chair, with that HVAC system, what's wrong with the current system? I mean, I'm not an HVAC guy, so I don't need you to give me technicals on it. I'm just.
Sure.
As you tear down walls, you have to replace ductwork and just move ductwork so that it heats and cools the areas efficiently. And that's really all it is. We're not changing any of the rooftop units.
I was going to say, we're not dealing with the top units, the big expensive units. We're just dealing with ductwork.
It's just ductwork, which $50,000 is quite a number for just moving some ductwork around. We've already taken care of the HVAC controls. That was done prior in the phase 1 item of our budget presentation. So we already have owner controls on that building wide.
Any further questions? I go to the board for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
move to authorize construction manager Kevin Burton authority to sign a construction contract with Mac Construction in the amount of $446,300 for work advertised as the Pennington County 14 St. Joseph Street Building Renovation Project as designed by Team TSP.
I have a motion
I'll second.
by Roskinek, seconded by Drews. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Foster.
So we're approving this value, but it could come down $50,000 more.
That's
Or
Potentially.
some
Yep.
factor. I'm just thinking, wouldn't it be prudent to wait and see what we can get it down to before approving this amount? I know you can always spend less than what we approve. I'm just thinking if there's other ways to save money on this deal. I mean, we've already figured out a realized savings of $778,000. Maybe there's some, this is taxpayer money. I know we've all been hearing that, but just asking the question.
The bid is the bid, so they can or cannot reduce that. They said they were open to it. I would like to make sure that they're awarded a project before we start negotiation in VE, value engineering. That way they know that they have the contract. We can have those discussions now, and they can still be able to come forth and do the job and still be able to make their money and satisfy us. I see that route as a better route to make sure that, yes, you do have a contract, but let's see how we can save some money off of that contract so that it doesn't disparage the project or either entity that's paying for it. Does that make sense?
Do have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries with 2 noes from Mr. Laster and Ms. Hadcock. We have a motion number 2.
This is for the administration building out at 900 Concourse.
Got discretionary spending on.
Oh, there was a second motion on the,
Yep, for discretionary
Public defenders.
spending. You're asking for discretionary spending of 5% of the construction amount for unforeseen conditions and not to exceed the amount of $22,315.
I'd make that as a motion.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Drews and seconded by Roskinet. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Laster.
Kevin, if you receive a reduction in that 446 that we just approved, wouldn't that cover some of that 22,000 discretionary fund spending?
It would.
So wouldn't it be wise to wait and see what you can renegotiate in that contract before we award you some more money for that? Would you be
That's
willing for
correct.
that?
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe I should ask that question differently. Would you be willing for that? I mean, if we're going to tighten up on each dollar that we've got.
That's fair.
Yeah, and we can bring it back. If we do reduce that cost, we'll bring an update to the commission and let everybody know what those numbers, what that negotiation ended up at.
Fair enough, thank you.
So we do have a motion on the floor. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No?
Motion carries with 2 noes. Next, that brings us to the 900 Concourse building.
Yeah, so the new administration building, we received several bids, quite a bit of interest in this project. The 3 lowest bids were fairly close with each other. When you take into the alternates, Seco still came out as the low bid for all the different phases. And so we would like to award the contract to Seco Construction in the amount of $6,493,000, which includes the base bid and alternates 1 and 2.
Any questions? Ms. Hadcock.
I thought the base bid with build out plus the alternative was total project cost with all alternatives was $7,400,000. That's what we're
The
voting
base
on.
bid, if you look at this chart here, the
Okay.
base bid was $5,600,000.
Yep, I got it.
Alternate 1 was the B&G building of $815,000.
Yep.
And alternate 2 was the second approach at $78,000.
Okay, and you didn't do the parking lot repair at 27?
We did not include that in this motion for award.
Okay, so let me ask you something. When you award this, you got 7.4 on there, right? 7,400,000?
In that memo there, that is the estimated budget that TSB provided us. So that was their estimated total amount for the base bid and all three alternates.
So tell me what the alternates and the base bid was right now.
That is the 5.6 million
Yes, sir.
for the base bid, 815,000 for alternate one, the B and G shop. Alternate two was 78,000 for the second approach.
Okay.
And alternate three for the parking lot repairs was 227,000.
And you want us to prove a what today? Tell me again.
$6,493,000.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So the additional building needs, when are you going to bring those up? Because you need to include the design services, which was 600 that you already paid, or is that for something more you're doing?
Design services are contracts that have already been approved.
Right, but doesn't that have to be paid in the total?
Those are separate individual contracts with the design firm that was approved by this commission. So that 595,000 has already been approved to be paid for. It's not part of this construction contract. It's separate contracts.
Not the contract, but the overall total for this spending authority. So if you already have, and you have the needs, if you're talking about the needs, you have to add all the needs in. And then most of the time you do the needs first, and then you'd add, because you have to have them, right?
So if I may,
Sure.
what this memo is trying to do is award the bid to Seco for the construction project. Those additional building needs that you see on that spreadsheet.
Yes, sir.
Those are estimates for network and IT equipment, for FF&E, and for audio and visual. Those are not hard numbers. Those are our estimates right now. And yes, they are needs, but we won't know exactly what we need until we finalize some of the construction throughout the year. And then we'll come back and ask for more spending to
Finish them.
fulfill those needs. Yep.
And that was my point. So you're at 6.5, right?
Mhm.
Basically, and then you have to have the needs. So you're not well under budget because you're going to still need the needs. So once you add the needs, it adds more money to it. And for some reason, you included on the 9,055 the 600,000. So I can't understand if it's needs and you already paid for it, it's still in the running total, which adds, if all of the needs and the parking lot, 9,055, which if we had it at the beginning where I showed, I think we had estimate remodel costs for new administration bank 8625. We're already at the administration building at this point. If we do everything we're doing, Mr. Davis, at 905,089.
And I think that cost that you're referring to is just for construction. So when you hear the 7 or 7.2 million that's been thrown around over the last few months, that is just construction. So that, if you look at that spreadsheet that we have up there, that would include your base bid and your three alternates.
Yes.
So that number did not include any of the additional building needs.
And that's what I'm saying. So when you're doing a spreadsheet, you include it all because the running total and what you're going to spend, I'm not trying to confuse you guys. The running total, if I'm spending money on a building, I have to have the running total at the bottom line. When I buy a building with all the costs, how much is it going to cost if I need because we weren't going to do the parking lot repair right away because we might not have enough money. Remember that, Kevin? But if we have the needs and we have these alternatives and we have 6.493, you still have the additional needs and you already spent the 600. So what that tells me, like I said, is you got, even take off $1 million. We were only supposed to have a budget around 7.2 for that reason. I know you guys are doing well and you're saving costs over here, and I appreciate it across the way, but we're adding costs here and we're not even done. So, Mr. Davis, you're right. This is just construction costs. This doesn't have all the building needs yet. So those totals add up into a total amount of what you're spending on a building, is what I'm saying, by the time you're done. And that's not included, that money's not included out of the department head's budget or general fund. That's supposed to be included in the building fund, the buildings, the ARPA, the bonds, all that money. That's why I'm trying to say that, Mr. Davis and Mr. Burton, that those totals all come out of that total. They shouldn't be having to pay for their furniture and everything out of, their, department heads, unless it's specialized stuff, and I don't know if we do that, sir, so I guess that's what I'm trying to say on this base bid. And I was for the administration building, so, I will be voting for this because the administration building has to be done. And, I'm moving forward on that, so.
Any
I
fur-
just encourage you to look at every cost that you're doing, because the bottom line is, hopefully it's not gonna suck up through your budget, Mr. Davis.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Laster?
All right, I just want to make sure that I'm following on this. The memo that we got, there was an estimate for the B and G shop at 560, but that ended up going up a significant amount to 815,000 was the bid. Did any other companies bid, or was that just one bid, or, because I saw the other two, they came down, and so that's the reason I'm coming asking, why did one go up and the other two ended up coming down? What was kind of the factor in that?
Yeah, that was a miss on the estimation of the A&E firm's estimator. There's a large retaining wall that needs to be backfilled for the back end of the shop to come out, and they had missed part of that scope in that estimate of the 500 and some. All of the 5 bids that we received on this project, the B&G shop was all within that range of plus or minus
About
10,
s-
10, 6, 7%,
yeah.
somewhere in that range. So they were all pretty competitive in there for that shop. So they had estimated it the way that it should have been. Unfortunately, the A&E missed that, and that's the 500,000. It added a couple hundred, 200 to 300,000 for that retaining wall and all the backfill and over excavation.
Okay, I saw that discrepancy. I saw the other two go down, and then that one went up significantly, and I was kind of like, well, there's got to be a reason, so fair enough.
Yeah, that was the first thing I reached out. I saw the same discrepancy and said, why is this? What happened? And they explained that their estimator had missed that portion of it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I'd look for a motion,
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
move to approve the construction contract with Seco Construction, the low responsible bidder for the Pennington County Office renovation project as designed by team at TSP in the amount of $6,493,000, which includes the base bid and bid alternatives 1 and 2.
Second.
I have a motion by Roskinek, second by Hadcock. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Motion number 2,
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
move to authorize construction manager Kevin Burton discretionary spending of up to 3% of the construction amount for unforeseen conditions in a not-to-exceed amount of $194,790.
Moved by Roskinek, seconded by Drews. Any
Mr.
further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Laster.
I thought when we built the bids and all that kind of stuff, there was some money always built in as contingency money. This is different than contingency money. Is that correct?
The 3% would be the owner's contingency money.
But isn't contingency money, or do we need to add an extra 3% for the previous contingency money that we have built in?
So the contractor's bid came in at the 6.5 to round up. That is their money. So they've built in their own contingencies into that, but that's the contract that we award to them. Then the owner has a contingency so that if they're digging outside and we find a line that's not in the right place or a conflict with underground utilities, that we have money to go ahead and award a change order. So that would be the contingency expense, but it's mainly just for unforeseen conditions. Whenever you get into a remodel project, you don't know what's under the ground. You can take your best guess, and you don't know what's inside of a wall or underneath of a slab. So once you start opening all this stuff up, there is a possibility of needing to reroute or redo something, and that creates a change order. And to stop construction, come back here and request that amount of money for a change order each and every time, delays the project and could cost additional general conditions from the general contractor. So if we have a contingency amount, a fund that we can utilize to offset that delay and be able to award small projects that have a conflict, then that's what that 3% request is for.
Chair.
I'm good.
Ms. Hadcock.
So in the past, we always had the change orders, I'll be up straight, Kevin, come to us. Mike always brought those change orders to us if they were gonna change the bid or change anything on the projects. He did, if we were gonna do anything, we did award like base bids, and then we did do alternatives, but anytime he had change orders, they came to us. We didn't do discretionary funding unless it was like under 50 or under 100. So I won't be voting for this, because if they're change orders and stuff, I'd like to see them beforehand and see what they are. I mean, that's just straight up, so I won't be voting for this on discretionary at this point.
We do have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries with a no from Lester and Hadcock. Next, that brings us up to item D, which is Highway GSC.
Final item we have before you today is the highway drainage project. And so the Natural Resources Weed and Pest Building, the old sign shop from the highway, have never been connected to the city sewer. They're still on an existing septic system. The lines have settled. There's backup issues with that. So we had put it in our budget a few years ago to try to update that and repair that. And then along the way, we also found out that all the drains, the roof drains coming off of the juvenile services building was draining off onto the neighbor's property and flooding out some of their buildings. So to be good stewards, we're going to try and pick up all of that rainwater and redirect it out to a storm drain location. So our original estimate from the engineer was $180,249. We received two bids on that project. One was $108,961. And the other was $158,000, so both less than our engineer's estimate. And we're seeking award to Fuller Construction at $108,961
Chair.
to move that project.
Ms. Hadcock.
Authorized Director B&G Davis Purcell signing authority to enter into a construction contract with Fuller Construction in the amount of $108,961 for the Highway and Juvenile Department Drainage Project.
Moved by Hadcock,
Second.
seconded by
Me or him. Whoever you pick.
Drews. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, this brings us up to items from emergency management.
You look like Dustin.
Alexa White, Deputy
Alexa.
Director for Pennington County Emergency Management. And I just am coming to talk to you about a check that we have received that we want to issue payment for. And I'll give you a little bit of background. I know you have it on the memo, but on the night of April 9th, a vehicle that was traveling at a high rate of speed crashed into the Memorial Park apartment building. And there were 51 residents that were sheltered in 31 rooms over a period of 18 days, and that included some food from the Holiday Inn as well. After that event, the Black Hills Area Community Foundation established a fund and collected some money to help cover this bill. And the bill came to $47,252.02. So while this wasn't, ideal to put them in an expensive place, it was what was right at that moment in the middle of the night, and it was across the street for these residents to be moved over there. So based on the reasoning of how these funds are distributed, they can only be given to 501c3s, government organizations like ourselves, or schools per the IRS rules. So they need to come through our office, based on some conversations with the auditor and with Human Services, to come through our office. And now we have a check in hand to then write to pay for this bill to the Holiday Inn. So my request would be to authorize the auditor to issue a check to the Holiday Inn Rapid City downtown in the amount of $47,252.02 for food and sheltering costs incurred while sheltering displaced residents from the Memorial Park apartments.
That'd be my motion.
Moved by Hadcock, seconded by Lassiter.
Follow up, please, Chair.
Ms. Hadcock.
Thank you. So Brian Nachbach worked with emergency management. I got a call that morning. I'm on the board of the Pennington County Housing. With the emergency services, all the first responders, it was amazing what they did with the gas lines and the food and everything else. The next day, we had people that were, Meals on Wheels was there because, at first when that bill was coming in, it's like, holy cow, you can't tell people they can't eat. So just kudos to everybody involved that helped Pennington County Housing. You guys were amazing. Like I said, the first responders in Rapid City, between the police department, sheriff, everybody was just top notch. So that was from our board. I was supposed to tell everybody that thank you very much. And you guys couldn't have done a better job. It was just amazing to watch how that came together. Even the Wrangle Construction, they just, and the people that worked there, they stayed overnight there to watch it, and it was just a good team effort. So kudos to everybody involved, and thank you for your team for helping us as well.
Thank you. I would concur with that. I think there was a lot of good work and even some fundraising to help these folks out at their stay there, and the teamwork that came together and the communication that happened between all the groups was amazing, and even the fundraising part of it. So I'd say kudos to all involved. I do have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Item 17 from Highway Department, and you were asking for a motion to approve the study on this instead of informational only. Right?
That is correct. Good morning, Commission. Joe Miller, Pennington County Highway Department. I'll try and get through today here, and lost my voice over the night. Evidently talked too much yesterday. So with that, I would like to introduce Steve Grable with KLJ, who was our lead on this project for the corridor study for Pennington County and Box Elder. He's been a good asset to this corridor study, and hopefully we can move forward after this study is complete with getting some design plans. So with that.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. I just want to say that this corridor study was personal for me. I have driven Radar Hill Road and 1416 many times. I have a lot of friends that live along the corridors that are always asking me, what are we going to do to improve traffic conditions and safety along these corridors? So to have the opportunity to work on it was sincerely a pleasure. I'm here this morning to talk about the recommendations, but I do want to highlight that county staff and Commissioner Lassiter sat on a technical committee that really guided this study. In addition, we had a significant input from the town of Box Elder, from the Metropolitan Planning Organization, from the South Dakota Department of Transportation, Federal Highway. We had representation from the Air Base. So we had a lot of stakeholders that were involved from the beginning that helped to respond to the analysis, to help us consider whether we had looked at all the alternatives, whether or not our conclusions were good. And then also through the course of the study, we appeared before the public on 3 occasions. All public meetings were heavily, the minutes from those are at the very back in the appendix. But we had at least 50 participants in each of the 3 public meetings. So we had significant input. I think the overall feeling that I walked away with is that in general, I think the public was
very supportive of how this study ended. There were concerns. There was good dialogue. I believe we listened to those concerns and we addressed them as we developed the alternatives. So as far as the alternatives, in general, what you're seeing in this presentation is that the eastbound lanes of 1416 would be removed in favor of a smaller median divided 5-lane section along 1416. Part of the problem with that corridor is we have that excessively wide median. So every intersection is actually 2 intersections. So it's difficult to control traffic. It's confusing for the public. So that was part of the answer for this corridor. What you're seeing with that blue line on the graphic is a recommendation for a new multi-use path along the corridor. And that was another thing we heard from the public, is that this just didn't feel safe. We've actually had pedestrian fatalities along this corridor. So providing facilities, making crossings safer, those were all key considerations as we looked at improvements. Here's a visual for what we're recommending on 1416 between Westgate Road and Ellsworth. Again, that would be a much narrower median, curb and gutter, and then the 10-foot sidewalk. East of there, from Ellsworth Road to 151st, the amount of traffic drops considerably. So what we're looking at there is a 2-lane facility with curb and gutter, shoulders, and again, continuing the sidewalk east all the way to eventually 151st Avenue, which is, I think it's like a couple miles east of Liberty. And there's a artist's rendition of what that would look like. For Radar Hill Road, again, much different corridor than 1416. The issues were different. What we're looking at from Highway 1416 to Old Calvary Road is a 3-lane section with 1 lane in each direction and a continuous center left turn lane. There's quite a few accesses in there, so that left turn lane is going to really help with safety. We're also looking at the shoulders providing a big benefit for both vehicles that get stopped for maybe larger loads, also for patrolling. One of the concerns we heard from the public is, hey, if you're a police officer and you pull someone over, there's really nowhere to safely engage with that vehicle. So having the shoulders is an additional benefit for safety. Additionally, we're looking at a 5-foot sidewalk. Bear in mind that this is the northerly section of Radar Hill Road that is within the Box Elder jurisdiction. So Box Elder would be looking at, that's why we're seeing the curb and gutter and storm drainage for that. Whereas then when you continue south and this becomes county jurisdiction, we're looking at shoulders. The first part of that from Old Calgary Road to Highlight Drive, there's really very limited access. So to save money, what we're proposing is a 2-lane section with the shoulders, and then we would build it out with gravel so that as that area develops, it would be very easy to widen and then pave out to that 3-lane section. The other thing I'll point out here is we're looking at 6-foot shoulders, again, for that safety benefit, but also those would serve for pedestrians and bicyclists throughout the rural section of the corridor, as opposed to building the separated sidewalk bike path. And then as you continue south to the end of the corridor from Highlight Drive to Highway 44, we're looking at going back to a fully paved 3-lane section. Again, what you're seeing that's changed here is that we've got a lot more access again. So having that paved center left turn lane makes a lot more sense. Again, the biggest difference between this and as you get into the Box Elder section is this would be a ditch section as opposed to having curb and gutter. So then looking at intersection recommendations, I wanted to point out recommendations for the key intersections that we studied, the first being Radar Hill Road. We looked at a lot of alternatives here, a lot of signalized alternatives. It does warrant signals if you wanted to put signals in. However, it was the conclusion that the signals had difficulty in operating well. We found that a roundabout would actually operate better, and it has the additional safety consideration in that with a signal, if someone runs the signal, you have these high-speed T-bone crashes, which tend to be very severe. With a roundabout, everything's more of a glancing blow. So it doesn't mean we won't have crashes here, but the severity generally drops considerably with the roundabout. We did receive a fair amount of input from the trucking community. They wanted to know, will these roundabouts work for us? So we did some special analysis to make sure that the circumference of the roundabout was big enough to handle all the truck traffic that's out there. At Commercial Gate Road, we had a fair amount of input from the air base because they use that significantly. What you're seeing here is what's called a 3/4 axis intersection. And what it would do, it would prohibit left turns out, which tend to be the least safe movement. And this would continue to be a stop-controlled intersection. Over at Ellsworth Drive, we're also recommending a roundabout. Again, we found that this operated the best. And what we found is that, especially in the mornings, if you're eastbound on Highway 1416 and want to go north on Ellsworth, it's a huge traffic movement. So even with double left turn lanes and a signal, it was really struggling to operate. With the roundabout, it seemed to operate very well. We looked at some very, I'll say, non-traditional solutions to this intersection, but we found that this one seemed to be the best given the situations that are there. What you're seeing in the blue is a concept that Box Elder has proposed in other documents to have a grade separated pedestrian bicycle crossing across 1416. So we wanted to make sure that we have both an at-grade version as well as a potential future grade-separated pedestrian underpass. Over at Liberty Boulevard, as I said earlier, the traffic volumes start to decline. Right now, it's north-south stop signs, and we see this continuing at least for the time being. It does not warrant traffic signals, but we are showing some design improvements to improve the operation of the intersection, and then it would be set up for future signalization once warranted. We did consider a roundabout here as well, by the way, but there's some site constraints with the drainage channel and the railroad tracks that made putting a roundabout in there not feasible. So we concluded the study by taking a look at the different costs associated with the different alternatives that we considered. Alternative 3 is kind of highlighted in a light green here, kind of hard to see, but I'll point it out with the cursor. This is the alternative that is being recommended. And so we've got a cost estimate assuming today's construction dollars at about $25 million. And then with inflation, by the time, let's say this gets built around 2030, that would be about a $30 million project. We looked at, similarly with Radar Hill Road, again with the existing construction dollars, we were at about 14 million. And looking at 2030 construction costs with inflation, we're looking at about $17.5 million. It's assumed that as these projects would move forward, they'd probably be moved forward in pieces. How those would be done, it really depends on what type of grant monies are acquired. Different grants are used for different elements. So those are decisions that are yet to be made as to how these projects would be funded. But the overall assumption is that they'd be multi-jurisdictional projects with funding coming from many resources in order to cover these costs. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Is there any questions?
Chair,
Ms. Hadcock?
I don't really have any questions, but I think, and believe it or not, I stayed up and went through a bunch of this. In the volume of cars, I didn't know you had that many volume of cars. The bicycle crashes that you've had, just the amount of, bottom line is, for safety, the safety issues on this road with no shoulders, the amount of cars that go through it, there's no room for bicycles or pedestrians. A lot of times if they're walking in that area, that's going to be a big growing area, up to, 4,000 people? Maybe that next couple of years at least. That's what I read on another report. This is something that's going to be crucial. That Radar Hill Road to 44, to I-90 in that area on 1416 is going to be huge for the county and Box Elder. So I think Joe already knew this. I like this project. I think it'll be a good project. The main thing is that state and federal funding, those grants. And one thing we can count on is Joe is very good at getting grants and looking into areas that can help, and has helped. As you remember, Joe, Travis, you've been involved in this from the beginning, how much you guys have worked with other people to get things done in these areas. Box Elder, they've come a long ways with you two's help. So I see this hopefully in the future to be something positive. Again, because of the crashes, because of the volume of cars, and it's only going to increase when more and more people come in for Ellsworth. So anything we can move ahead with in Pennington County, like I said, infrastructure is huge. If you don't have infrastructure, that's everything to build a city or a county or even a state to make it more efficient. So anything you have to say, Joe, on the grants or this project?
I'll just say that we are currently working with the state safety engineer to figure out just how many dollars are available in the federal funding for the safety dollars. So federal safety dollars are 90% federal and 10% county. So there's currently in the STIP for the state, they have about $7.2 million currently still programmed for the intersection of Highway 1416 and Radar Hill. With the construction of exit 63 coming to Westgate Road, and then from Westgate Road to Radar Hill, we're trying to figure out just how many dollars would be asked of Pennington County and Box Elder to get at least from the exit 63 to Radar Hill reconstructed into that 5-lane and a roundabout, and then maybe branch back out into the current divided to take care of that major intersection. We put the stop signs up there 2 years ago now, and that helped quite a bit. But we're trying to work through with the state exactly how many dollars are available, and it might be something that we have to pay for the engineering up front to figure that out. So
Yep.
we're still working through the process on that. So hopefully we'll get.
And Joe, I think we knew that from the beginning on the engineering costs But this is a very efficient and effective report, which is going to help try to find grants or monies, because this is what you need as well. So very good job, sir, and I think I told you that when you had first met me up front. So very efficient, has everything we need, and it makes sense, like I said, with the pedestrian, with the volume of cars, the shoulders, everything that we need. It's going to come into Radar Hill Road south, and those shoulders for us, those shoulders for us are going to be huge because people are going to want to start going down there as well. So I don't know, we can't really do sidewalks in Pennington County on that road, but there needs to be something, maybe even a little bit bigger shoulders or something. So we're making it efficient for bicycles, because I see people using that corridor more than they're going down I-90 or anywhere else to get, to Rapid City if they're on a bike, or just to be more safe. How about that? So thank you for all your work, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Laster.
Thank you, Joe and Steve. I know I was jumping up and down on some people's desks for a while, trying to bring this to attention, and I'm glad Joe was listening, and I'm glad others were hearing as well. So I appreciate the work and all of us working together, making sure we got the right parties to the table so we can navigate through concerns and everything of that nature. And I like the final product from all the discussion and for listening to all the people. So I appreciate the hard work into this so far. Let's just hope we could make it a realization now that we have a pretty good plan of action if we can just get the funding for it. So thank you.
The work has just begun, so.
Yes.
And I'll say, I just absolutely concur with these people that it's been a lot of hard work, and we got a lot of people who want to see this done. And this was the first step that we need to have done. And so that's what's going to, I think, start the fire to get it moving forward, is now we got a plan and we can start moving forward. And so I think everybody is excited to have this done. With that, you need a motion to approve the study, correct?
That is correct.
So moved.
Yep, second.
Moved by Laster, second by Hadcock. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
I
Ruskin.
like the idea of the roundabouts. I see them a lot overseas, and they really do work. So if you can eliminate traffic signals, I think roundabouts will be a good alternative.
Thank you.
In Indonesia, I saw one, I bet there were 10 lanes. That gets kind of confusing.
Yeah, the roundabouts are definitely, they move traffic and they continue to move traffic, so.
So brings us up to item B.
Item B is authorization to let contracts for a limestone lead rock base course. Typically during our annual supplies, when we let for the aggregate supplies, typically we get a bid from Pete Leans and Simon. We received one from Simon, but they were higher than Western Construction for the base course in all aspects. So we awarded those bids to Western Construction, who has just what we call an alluvial base course without the limestone. We have roads in Pennington County, as you imagine, that have had limestone on them for many, many years. And we would like to continue to put limestone on those. So with that, we'd like to request authorization to advertise and let these bids for just a limestone base course.
Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskin.
move to authorize the Highway Department to advertise and let contracts for the supply of limestone ledge rock base course.
Second.
Moved by Roskinek, second by Drews. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Item 18. This is
Mr. Chair,
request for guardrail for Mystic Road. Mr. Daniel Harns, Rochford Rural Volunteer Fire Association. This was brought forward by Mr. Roskinek. Mr.
I was
Roskinek.
just going to introduce Dan Harn, who's the fire chief for the Rochford Fire Department.
Okay.
2020 resident in that subdivision that John Crane lives in brought this to my attention. And so we asked, I think it was Joe Hilt, come up to give us an estimate what it cost to put the guardrails that he quoted, they were used. And there's three corners that I think, are fairly dangerous, and I think with the increase in traffic and the side-by-sides, it's only gonna get more dangerous. But with that, I'll let Fire Chief Harns speak to this.
Mr. Daniel Harms.
Thank you, Commissioners. As Ron said, I'm Dan Harnum, the fire chief in Rochford. I'm a little bit of history. My family moved up there in 1977. The traffic changes and everything we've seen since that time, as is Hills Wide, has grown pretty significantly. But in the last 5 years, with the side-by-sides, the increase of people moving in the area, and there's just been a huge influx of traffic in the area. There's the corners Ron had referenced. Also, there's a couple areas where there's some pretty steep, not quite sheer, but almost sheer drop-offs. There's a couple cars, as I sent all you commissioners that letter. There's a couple cars been down there since the 50s or 60s that were just too hard to get out at that time. And they're still down there. We've been extremely lucky. We've not had any cars go clear down over the bank. We've had some go over, but not to the extent that it's very concerning to us. Our fire department has discussed this over the years many times, and it's gotten to a point we think it's getting to be kind of a critical. It's not if something's going to happen, it's going to be when. And when it happens, or if it happens and when, we're looking at our extrication capabilities are pretty minimal. We've got jaws of life, we've got cars out, stuff like that, or people out of cars. But if they go over the bank, we're looking at search and rescue from Rapid City having to come up, and that's at best an hour before we get any help. And if we've got an entrapment situation or a vertical rescue, the golden hour is kind of the critical piece that they use for trauma. And our critical hour is gone before we're ever paged. And if it ends up being something extensive like that, we're looking at a couple, 3 hour issue. And our proposal for it, or our thought of it, is that if we can put some guardrail in and prevent people from going off those areas, save life, injury, whatever it is down the road, it's something that would be pretty easy to do. I have no idea on cost and stuff. It's something, my opinion, should have been done years and years ago. And, I guess I don't think we should wait until it happens, when it'd be something that'd be pretty preventable and something that we can, stave off and get some people are going to hit guardrails, go in the ditch or whatever. But if we can prevent loss of life or serious injury with a simple guardrail in a few places, it's not like guardrailing the whole thing. It's just, the critical places where people could go off. Talking with the community members there, everybody was for it. I heard not one person against it. Also, Dana Gary with the Mickelson Trail, her crews drive that road all the time down to the Mickelson or the Mystic Trailhead and stuff. I talked to her this last weekend. She was going to try and get me a letter of support for it, but she didn't have time. But she said, go ahead and throw her name out there as totally in favor of this too. Her crews go drive by there, the bicyclists, the tour vans, whatever. I just had one other point here, I'm sorry. Oh, I was just going to mention, even this last winter, there's 3 times when I drove by there were vehicles that had one tire go off the edge. And I ended up pulling 2 of them out, and one I told them they had to call a tow truck. I was worried about them going over the edge. But that's just 3 that I drove by. And I don't drive that road every day. And, the potential of where they could go off and the significant injury or death that could happen from it, I think would be very preventable by putting some guardrails in the key places.
Mr.
Thanks,
Chair.
Daniel. Mr. Laster.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, well,
Well, I just recognize. Go ahead, Mr. Laster.
I just got a question.
Yes, sir.
Those instances is when they're going off of the road, whether they go off and go into over the edge or whatnot, are they over driving the conditions of the road?
I would say most of them, yes. But there are some, because it is a narrow winding road, I don't know how familiar you are with that road. A lot of people are scared to death of the ditch. And so they ride towards the middle of the road and, you know, the people swerve in self-defense and then they drop over. Luckily, they're going slow enough that they haven't gone all the way over. I mean, over the years, there have been some that have been unreported for whatever reason, and they got them out themselves. Apparently, there were no injuries or anything. Typically, yes, on those roads, it is people over driving conditions, especially in the wintertime. It gets slick, you get ice and snow build up, but, you know, that happens everywhere.
Happens everywhere. You got to slow down. A lot of people want us to make it where they can drive the speed limit regardless of what the weather and the road conditions are.
Yeah, and that's not realistic. And, you know, we understand it's not realistic to, you know, guardrail everything and wrap everybody in bubble wrap and protect everybody. We just want it because of the potential for the significant injury, entrapment, you know, an extended response time. You know, as you guys heard, my pager just went off and you know, coming from Rapid, I'm an hour out. Up there sometimes, you know, we got a huge district. We go to the state line and Lawrence and Pennington County, we're going to have an extended response anyway. And then to get added help, if we need it, especially from like search and rescue and getting, if we had to get a vertical rescue or if it's an extensive extrication down over the vehicle or over the hill, you know, we'll page Hill City, search and rescue, Johnson, whoever we need to get for help, but it's going to be a long time. And it's very concerning to us. When a little bit of guardrail, you know, like I said, we're not expecting miracles, but we want to prevent it if we can.
Mr. Chair, just two quick questions then. Do you know the cost to put those guardrails in? And actually, the first question probably should be, what's the speed limit on that road during that in that area? And that's probably more of a
Do you
Joe
know?
cost.
I do
Or
not. I
question.
think it's 30, but I'm not going to swear to that.
Good morning, Commission. Joe Miller, Pennington County Highway Department. The updated cost from Joe Hill with used guardrail. And the the only guardrail that would be able to go in here is a cable guardrail. So the 3 cables, that's the only thing that will work with the banks being as steep as they are. W-beam would not be feasible. Was about $19,000 is the cost. The speed limit through that area is 35 miles an hour, but on the curves that are being talked about by Mr. Harns here, the speed placard prior to going into these curves is 10 miles an hour.
Oh, it drops to 10?
It's an advisory speed plaque on a curve sign, which is 10 miles an hour.
Thank you.
Mr. Ross Connect.
Thank you. So, yeah, we addressed the cost, but, so this would be the second time this has been brought up to the commission, and like Dan said, it's just a matter with the increased traffic and the detour from Highway 385. I was on that road yesterday about 6 o'clock in the evening, and people drive like idiots. I'll just say that. I think it's only going to get worse. Black Hills, you know, you see the growth, you see the tourism numbers increase. Like you said, it's just a matter of time, and I think we should be proactive instead of reactive. And now that this has been brought to the commission twice, if we don't act on this and there is an accident, we've got some pretty, to me, we got some negative exposure to this.
Chair.
And I appreciate you coming here today, Dan, speaking on this.
Of course, thank you, Ron.
Ms. Heck, you done?
Yeah.
Ms.
Dan,
Hancock.
you know I respect you a lot, and I love the fire department, but I also have to go with some of the facts on this. We're right, we have to be proactive, not reactive. So we also look at how many crashes were in this area in the last 10 years, and based on the heavy use, is Memorial Day is the only heavy use, not the only heavy use, but is probably when it looks like they conducted the updated traffic counts. Significant increase was during Memorial Day. Other than that, there's not a lot of heavy use in this area. The volume does not meet the criteria for guardrail installation. The last 10 years, lack of crash data further reinforces the conclusion of the guardrails are not warranted. Also, 19,000, there's a lot of areas that we could probably be more reactive on. And we just did Rochford Road, so that's gonna relieve some of the additional traffic in that area. Guardrails, it says on Joe's memo here, installation would narrow the road, complicating gravel maintenance operations. Snow removal, narrowing the road with guardrails installation would also hinder snow removal. We also have to think of the safety of our employees as well. Narrowing it on a 35-mile-an-hour road, that they should go around the curves at 10 miles per hour with no crashes already. That doesn't warrant, for me, $20,000 being spent for a guardrail. Based on our highway director's direction, based on the crashes. If like Radar Hill Road, you heard there's bicycles, there's pedestrians, there's different people. They actually have that data on those roads, and that warrants it, is what he's saying. On this, it does not, Dan. I base it on, a little bit of everything, but it doesn't warrant 20,000. And because it's brought up again, we have to be proactive, not reactive, because we have a bunch of different roads in Pennington County as well. And if we just did it for this, there's a lot of areas that you can put some guardrail on if that's going to be a reactive thing that we do here in Pennington County. So thank you, Dan, for bringing this. I can't vote for this based on this, but I do respect that you brought this forward, sir.
And thank you, Deb. And if I may respond, one of the things that does happen up there quite a bit is we do have minor accidents that do not get reported.
Right.
And even to us, a lot of times being who I am and stuff, I hear about them, but it does, so there are accidents that happen.
Right.
It's like the guardrail that does exist, when you go a little bit more towards Rochford, on the big hairpin corner on that hill and stuff. Years and years ago, probably in the mid-'80s, we kind of fought to get guardrail on that hill. And nothing happened until two cars rolled off of it, and I appreciate what you say. I do understand with the cost restraints and everything. And like I said, we're not asking for a miracle. We're just a lot of concern, and it's not just us. I mean, I've heard it from the sheriff's office that said, why are there no guardrails and stuff? And, I don't have an answer for them. And it was brought to my attention, again, people were getting concerned with the increase of traffic.
Right.
And so I wanted to bring this forward, and Commissioner Rosknick, was talking with him.
Do you think, Dan, with Mystic Road traffic will go down because of Rochford Road?
I don't. I think it'll stay the same or increase just because of the Mickelson Trail access. Rochford Road going east is going to be chip sealed, and then with the increase of traffic on the paved road, I think we're going to see more of the Mickelson Trail users coming out there, and we're going to see an increase of the side-by-side traffic because they want to get off the paved roads.
And that'd be South Rochford, right?
Correct. Well, South Rochford Road, and then they're going to chip seal. I think, Joe, is that still, Rochford Road's still going to be chip sealed, is my understanding.
Yeah, Rochford Road is going to be, the base stabilization is going to be started next week on the 10th. That's going to take about 10 days, and then we'll chip seal it in July. So that'll be Rochford, but South Rochford Road is in the process of being reconstructed. So I believe that's what you were referring to. That's what I referred to in my memo with the paving of South Rochford Road. I believe it will take a lot of pressure off of Mystic Road. You'll have 385 and you'll have South Rochford, both paved accesses. People are generally going to go to the paved access if they're in a car, so.
And Dan, we can't help if you're 35 miles an hour. It doesn't matter where you're at, anywhere in the state, and you're going faster around the curve than 10 miles an hour. So putting a guardrail there makes them, okay, it's a safety issue, but if they're not going to listen, they're not going to listen at the 35 when they're supposed to be going 10. So that tells me, I don't know if it's the off-roaders or who's doing it, that it's probably just not that area. There's a bunch of areas that probably need guardrails.
Hills wide, yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So what we do is, we do it by warrant and not, like I said, by where's the biggest safety factors, and we have to take that in consideration. Actually, Joe does, and then he brings it to us because that's why he has a certain budget for guardrails and everything else. But like I said, there's no harm in asking.
Exactly, and that's why I'm
Yes,
here.
sir. So I appreciate
And I
that.
just think it, like I said, just to repeat it, I think it is a big enough concern.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna happen. It's just a matter of time.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
So, Dan, I do drive that road occasionally, but I've never checked. Is there cell phone service
No.
right at those areas? There's not.
No, and part of that, if I may, our fire hall, we put in an emergency 911 phone. It's tied into our phone line, but it will only call 911. And we put a big light over it for at night because there is no cell phone access up there.
Okay. Well, I support safety on that, and I agree with you. I think the number of traffic is gonna increase, not only on that road, but most of the other roads in that area just because of the popularity. So I'm gonna support, moving forward with that.
Thank you.
I just think it is preventive, and I think it's a need that probably should have been done a long time ago. So, thanks for bringing it.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank
I
you.
think I had next in line.
Well, I guess what I was gonna say is that you really can't appreciate how dangerous those corners are until you're there physically and getting out of the vehicle and looking down that steep slope and seeing those abandoned vehicles down there that have been there for 50 years. If a vehicle did go over and you didn't see it go over,
How long's it gonna be?
it could be days before somebody actually, it's just being there in person. I know there's some photos included here, but you really can't get a grasp of how dangerous those corners are unless you're literally there in.
Right.
And
And I apologize, my tech skills were not good enough to give you the opportunity to look at good photos of it. I tried, but I'm not technically good enough for it.
Okay. Next, are you done? Mr. Lester.
Mr. Chair, thank you. My background is primarily EMS. I don't know if you knew that. I know Jerome knows that. I've been involved in a lot of different studies. The traffic intersection down in New Underwood, I got that changed because of incidences going on, but I was also involved with when the Pearly Pit was being asked for, and the public was saying, hey, because people drive fast down there, they're causing, there's accidents going to be caused. And so whenever we look at all these things, my decision is going to be based on if the people are following the traffic laws and there's accidents, that means there's something that we need to correct. If we got speed limit 30 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, recommend 10 miles an hour on a curve, and they're overdriving it, that's not the county's responsibility, that's the individual's responsibility, and that's kind of what we had to point out during the Pearly Pit. Concerns from the public because they said, well, these trucks are coming out and people driving too fast on the road. And I said, well, if people are driving too fast on the road, it's the person who's driving too fast on the road's fault, not the county's fault to mitigate that. And I think this is one of those things as well. If it's not the county's fault or if it's not a inherent fault of our road system or things of that nature, we've got to sign properly and things of that nature, it doesn't warrant us getting in there. I mean, I've done extrications from vehicles. I understand. But I also understand when I drive in the hills, I drive a lot slower in the hills. And I have a lead foot. But when it comes to the hills, I know it's hilly. If it's rain, it's slick. So I slow down. My kids have learned that if you're on gravel road, you got to slow down because you might hit a soft spot and you might go in the ditch and roll a truck. One of my teenagers found that out. Again, you got to learn to drive the road conditions and be safe when you're doing it. And so I've looked at the report on this. I don't know if I'm convinced that adding an extra cost on it because the first vehicle that hits that and tears it out or whatever, or maybe it's two, there's going to be a loss of integrity of where you can reattach. And then we're just going to allow people to have it in their mindset, oh, I can go faster because now I've got a safety net. Well, that's not what we want to encourage. We want to encourage slowing down in these areas. I'm sorry, I can't support it at this point in time without it being something that that we are causing a problem to make it where it's an unsafe travel environment. We've signed it right. I do thank you for coming up here. I mean, you're in the EMS world still. It was my passion for 21 years, and I still have a lot of experience, and I stay around in it as well. So
Chair,
thank you for bringing it.
I want
Thank
to
you.
give,
go ahead.
I want to give Joe a chance to.
That's what I was going to ask you if I could ask.
Joe,
but go ahead.
could you please, you put a memo on you, but we haven't given you a chance to really give your side.
No, I appreciate it. I think there's a lot of good points taken here, and I just want to point out, it's not the dollars that is why we're in opposition to this. I think putting this guardrail in, and I talked to Joe Hilt last week on this exact thing and the installation of the guardrail here. The cable guardrail, it's not going to hold a car up there, right? It may hold them up there if it's a slow speed, but as Travis alluded to, you know, if they're traveling at a higher rate of speed, that cable guardrail, the post in the middle, if a car hits that and goes over the bank, they're going to continue down the bank. You know, the cable guardrail isn't meant to hold anything, right? They're anchored on the ends. Once the integrity of the guardrails hit, it's going to drop, right? So with that, there's some other things that are concerned of the highway department, the gravel road maintenance. That road, especially the first corner, if I may.
No,
I believe it's this one, if I'm looking at the pictures correctly here. This is the first major right-hand turn. The road is 18 feet wide already, right? So the installation of guardrail in there, while we may be able to maintain that 18-foot, a vehicle and a driver, everybody's driven through construction zones is the example I'll use, right? You tend to slow down because you're in the construction zones and those barrels are really close to you, right? And you're going to drive as far away from them as you can. So put yourself in the driver's seat. You're driving right around this guardrail with the ATVs that are running rampant in the Black Hills around this blind corner, right? A driver is going to move away from the guardrail closer to the center, and they're probably already driving in the center of the roadway. So instead of, while you are perceivingly solving one issue, you're creating three others. The gravel road maintenance, the snow removal, and you're possibly, you know, if we're talking possibilities here, or hypotheticals, I'll call it, you're hypothetically going to cause head-on collisions around this blind corner. Those are just some of our concerns, and it's a low-volume road in AASHTO standards, the low-volume roads standards. And those standards, if you look into them, and I put some of that stuff in the packet here, if you look and read through that stuff, if you don't have to put guardrail on a road, don't do it, is essentially what the low-volume roads manuals tells you to do. So with that, I mean, if you guys want to vote to give it, to have guardrail put here, we're more than happy to do that. I don't recommend it. It's against the recommendation, so that's all I got.
Thanks, Joe. After carefully considering this, my thoughts on this is, and this comes from my experience of going through a guardrail that had cables on it and pulling the posts out and caused more damage than, yes, I was 17 and over, not was speeding, but the experience is it stripped everything from the car and tore metal up and stuff. And after listening to the testimony here today, you know, I was either way, but I think after listening to some of the stuff that's happened, I think it's not warranted at this time. That's my thoughts on it. So,
Chair,
Ms. Hancock.
I agree with you as well, Commissioner LaCroix, only because liability. So what if they crash into it and it makes the issue worse? Or if it wasn't there, will it be the county because the county's saying this is a safety factor once you put the guardrails up? Plus, I have to ask, is this a priority? Because, Joe, how many of these areas do you think you could put guardrails in everybody's district and call it a priority at this point before spending this 20,000 on this area? Is there bigger priorities? Because we know from the fire department, we have 10 priorities before this one. Is this what you're going to put up front for the highway department to spend their money on? That's another issue. And like I said, it might end up being a liability. So Commissioner, you are right about what might happen with that guardrail.
Yeah, and I may point out, our Hill City foreman has grown up in the Hill City district as well and driven and hunted this area a lot. And, you know, I value his opinion quite a bit, and people respect this, right? As everybody stated here today, it's scary when you stand there and look down that slope and those cars that are down there, you know, whether they got dumped off there or whether they ended up there wrecked. I mean, that's up for debate. Nobody here knows the answer to that question. So, it's a scary slope. I will absolutely grant you that, but people respect it because it is scary. And that's coming from our Hill City foreman that has grown up in the area. And Dan, you've been in the area. I mean, it's scary. You drive slow.
It is. And it is a low speed, low impact road. I understand that. So, you know, and I appreciate the opportunity to come present our aspect of it. And Joe, I appreciate your opinion. You know,
So at this time, this is a request for guardrails on the Mystic Road.
Chairman?
Mr. Chair.
I had Ms. Hadcock first, and I'll go to you. Ms. Hadcock,
I'm going to deny the request as presented.
there's a motion
Yes, sir.
to deny the request. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Laster. Mr. Roskinek.
I think we're just making the assumption that people are going to go 10 miles an hour, and that's not necessarily the case. If you see the increase in the side-by-side traffic, it'd be nice if they were going 10 miles an hour, but I'm thinking that what will eventually happen, and I don't want to see anybody go over, but if they do, and they know that we denied that request today for safety purposes, I just think there's going to be liability for the county.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Laster.
I would say if they go over it because they're over driving the road conditions, the posted speed limit signs, the recommendations, the county has no liability in that.
Right.
So we do have a motion on the floor.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
I would think we might want to consider lowering that speed limit. So the speed limit is like 25, giving a larger warning to the traveling public that this is a real issue. Just throwing it out there for a suggestion.
and may I say something as far as signage goes? I don't know how Joe feels about this, but if we could just get those signs that say keep right would help a lot too. Keep people out of the center of the road on the corners. I don't know how that works for you, Joe.
I will take a look at that. I'm not familiar with those signs. Generally, I don't think that's anything we've ever done.
Lawrence County has some. It just says stay to the right.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking at, and this is off the cuff here, so, I mean, look, I didn't look at the speed. 85th percentile, where we placed this speed counter, people were going 25 miles an hour. Is the 85th percentile is generally where we place this, and if my recollection is correct, we placed this counter down from the first blind corner where we've always placed it, kind of coming up the hill. So people are coming up the hill. I mean, we could place a counter in these corners. The problem is where they attach them, right? They attach them to signs. So I'll look into seeing if we can do another count to see what if it does warrant lowering the speed limit according to this. You know, the 85th percentile is 25 miles an hour. That's more of a residential type stuff is my initial gut reaction, but without looking into it further, I'm not willing to say.
Mr. Chair,
Suggestion.
I just have a question, Joe, since you're there. I just want to make sure I'm understanding you. Are you saying there was a speed counter in that area and the average speed, 85% of it, is at 25 miles an hour? Is that what you're telling me on this?
So what I'm telling you is we did a traffic count for the 2 weeks from May 15th to May 28th. So over that Memorial Day weekend and a week prior. And the 385 closure was on May 20th. So that's when they closed 385. 85% of the people that went over this counter, so there's two tubes, so it counts the speed. 85% of them were going 25 miles or less. The median speed was 20 miles an hour. And again, I believe this counter was about a quarter mile north of these curves. So going up the hill is it's gonna skew it a little bit, but people are generally driving under the road conditions.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can follow up, well, then, doesn't that warrant maybe posting a lower speed limit since no one's really, I mean, even the maximum looks like it's 31.1 miles an hour, wouldn't lowering the speed limit on there, or at least the posted speed limit, at least, it's probably not gonna change the habits of the drivers, because we're seeing the habit of the drivers is at that 25 mile an hour, but for those that are not familiar with the area, would it be advisable to maybe drop that speed limit, since we're seeing the normal traffic is already driving below that, just out of curiosity?
Well, and that's why there's a speed placard on those curve signs prior on each side of it. The other thing we have to keep in mind is this is a fairly short stretch of about a half a mile of curves. And then you get into open terrain after that. So lowering it for that half a mile doesn't really warrant. That is the other thing we got to look at too.
That's why it's a recommendation, not just lowering it for half a mile. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay. We do have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussions?
Can you restate the motion, Mr. Chair? It's to deny,
The
right?
motion is to deny the request for guardrails on Mystic Road. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Aye.
Motion carries with 2 noes from Ross Connect and Mr. Drews.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Item number 20. Items from Threat Management Group.
Good morning, Commissioners. Walter McDuff, Pennington County Risk Manager. What I bring to you today is the same bylaws for the Threat Management Group that I brought to you on May 21st for informational purposes only. Today I'm in front of you guys to request adoption of those bylaws.
Is there any questions for Walter? Being none, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Laster.
move to adopt Threat Management Group bylaws governing the establishment and purpose of the Pennington County Threat Management Group.
Second.
Moved by Laster, seconded by Drews. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you,
Walter.
Commissioners.
Next, we have item 21, and this is action, I'll recognize Carol Bancroft.
Good morning, Commission. Carol Bancroft, HR Director. I'm here representing the Compensation Committee, and this is a follow-up to the May 21st meeting where the Compensation Committee respectfully recommended that they be given sufficient time to complete the wage study so that it could be presented in the July 8th and 9th budget hearings. So the motion could read that the Commissioners approve extending the timeline for finalizing the wage scale to allow the wage scale recommendations to be presented during the provisional budget hearings on July 8th and 9th.
Is there any questions for Carol?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Laster.
last meeting we talked about having some more data that I had sent via email, and we said we would discuss that. I would like to know if we would be willing to add that to this particular motion if we're going to move forward so that we have some more data. The survey, the turnover rate for the last 2 years, and the other counties being utilized, their costs for benefits and things. Carol did talk to me before the meeting, letting me know that they are working to get that data. And so if they're going to be getting that data, I think we need to have it in our packet and present it as well within that.
Carol?
Thank you, Commissioner Laster. As far as what I shared with you, I don't know that we could get that information in time because we're having to reach out and ask different counties to reply. So I don't know if we could have a comprehensive report on the benefits at that point in time. The attrition information I will definitely have in the state of employment presentation on the 8th before the budget hearings get started. So that would be my concern. I don't know if there's adequate time to get all of that information by then?
I think, Mr. Chair, that's kind of why I put it on the radar last meeting, is so that we could at least get that moving. And then, the statement was, let's move it to this one to take action on. So I think that's some important information before we make a decision on our budget. That's my opinion on that one, so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Laster. Is there any other questions? Ms.
Yes, sir.
Hadcock?
Thank you. So I'm with Travis on some of the information just from what I've seen in the past from using wage comparables and light cast analysis on some of the stuff that has been happening already. So at this point, I really like what you guys did with the job description and how you did it as department heads. But from the wage comparables and light cast analysis, I don't think a lot of departments had that ability and should have been doing that in the first place. So that's my personal opinion. Like I said, at first, I thought this was going to be a great idea. But once we started using some of this wage comparables and light casts analysis and giving people wage exceptions and things, I wasn't in favor of it anymore because it wasn't working out for the comparables and the analysis that I thought it would in the end. So I'm just going to be up straight. I love the job description, but I have an issue with us having people make the decisions on something that they weren't qualified in a way to do, and then taking the time to have to do all that in between their other work. And this is not just me saying this, this is some of your department heads to have to do this. So, again, you never know, I could change my mind depending on that budget, but right now, from what I've seen in the past, I'm not in favor of this, so, I'm not in favor of doing having the department heads do the wage comparables and light cast analysis on their own. I think it should have been either done by a different company or something that doesn't look more of conflict of interest for Pennington County. So,
Thank you. So the motion, what's on the floor is to extend the timeline to the July 8th and 9th. Mr. Drudas.
So Carol, I commend the compensation committee for the work that they have done in this. I've not had any department head tell me that they felt that they shouldn't have been a part of this, or that department heads shouldn't have been a part of this. I think this has been excellent information that they've gathered and put together. And I'm looking forward to the final recommendations that are coming forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that,
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Roskinek.
move to extend the timeline for finalizing the wage study to allow the wage scale recommendations to be presented during the provisional budget hearings on July 8th and 9th of 2024.
Second.
Moved by Roskinek, seconded by Drews.
Chairman,
Ms. Hadcock.
one more thought. So I also, and I forgot to say this, usually we start the budget earlier, and we are in charge of the budget. We usually finalize, or not finalize, we do the preliminary budget, and we get that done by the end of July. So you're going to hand us this on July 8th, and we're going to go through all this, and we're going to be able to do all that work, plus all the other work, and finalize that, or try to finalize that in a couple weeks. I think that's a bad way to do business for trying to do budgets. This is the first year I've had it this late since I've been here, and that's, I don't know how many years now, a long time. So I'm one that likes to look through it. I like to talk to the department heads. I like to see what's going on. And you're not giving us enough time this year to do that. That's a lot of budget. That's a lot of buildings. That's a lot of costs that are coming our way. And for a commissioner to try to do all that work, that's why I said, bringing that up later, for wage scales, for buildings, for all this stuff, we're putting a huge burden on ourselves to be able to do this work. And it saddens me to see this happen, how it's happened at this point and this late in the game of everything that's happened on our spending authorities, and then have us figure it out. Those books are this big. We have a lot of departments. So when you think we're trying to be facetious up here, at least me, I actually do my work. I actually like talking to the department heads. I actually like the department heads and what we do here in Pennington County. That's a lot of burden to put on, I'm gonna say myself, for wanting to do the work and do it correctly and do it right and be able to actually look at the numbers so it doesn't look like we're just being facetious up here. So
So Commissioner Hadcock, if I could interject, that has been something that the compensation committee has worked with the commissioners with doing working sessions. And I'm saddened that you weren't able to do the second working session, but we can certainly catch you up. There is an intention to do a third working session with each of the commissioners to be able to help you see the wage scale and what the results of that will be prior to coming on July 8th or 9th.
I appreciate that, Carol, but it wasn't for me because actually I was going to meet later and we decided that you guys still needed some work. So it was 2 to 3 weeks out. So that's why I didn't meet with you again or even set up the meeting because you guys said to me, okay, Joe did. Can't remember officially if it was you, ma'am. So that I didn't need to worry about it right now because you guys were making some more changes. So that's why I didn't meet on the second time. So I appreciate that thought, but that's why that never happened, ma'am.
Right, and we're more than happy to make sure that we have that session with you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, because I just do want to make comments that the compensation committee has made a point to reach out, try to get as much information to the commissioners as possible. So,
No numbers.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Laster.
Carol, I just have a question before I make a vote on this. Is there any reason why there couldn't be a presentation on June 18th at our next meeting? Or is there just that much information that has to be reconfigured before you bring it to a budget hearing? Because I think it would be important to give us more time than just the Friday or the Thursday before a meeting on Monday, the 8th.
So as far as June 18th, we had considered that, but we need to make sure that the departments have adequate time to get their budgets together as well, and to take that information before the compensation committee and get their approval to move forward to bring it to the commissioners. So it really truly is a timing issue for us.
I do have a motion on the floor. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries the 2 noes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, this brings us to items from Commission Manager.
All right, Commissioners, the first item that I have in front of you is just another request to see if there are any resolutions that the board is interested in directing staff to prepare for consideration to move forward for next year's legislative session. If there isn't, that's fine. Just we're coming up against some deadlines to be able to get it in front of the Black Hills District for their consideration before moving on to the state association. So just wanted to provide the board one more opportunity, and if there isn't any, then we're good to go.
Okay, sir. Any considerations?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Laster.
Well, property tax is probably a big concern for all of our residents, and there's been a lot of conversation about property tax, sales tax, and things over the last couple of years. It would probably be good if we, as a board, if we have any kind of recommendation or resolution that we would be willing to support. I know there's some legislators that are, working. There was one that I know is planning on working on some legislation dealing with sales taxes the coming year. But if we, as a board, agree on some kind of, position on that. I don't know how that looks when you're this early out.
Yeah.
But I think it's something we should at least talk about of where, we feel as a board that we sit for Pennington County do we support a sales tax initiative? Do we support, reducing owner-occupied property taxes and shifting that to either a sales tax or something? I think that's something we should consider, because that's probably one of the biggest topics I heard in this last election, just for the primary, is that's the biggest concern of our citizenry is the property taxes. I understand there's a perceived overevaluation, and it is because of all the outside influence, but ultimately it still impacts their property tax when it comes down to it, based off of our budget. So I think if we have some ideas, perhaps we need to talk about it and then look forward to, I would certainly be interested in a tax resolution to really reduce the burden on our owner-occupied citizens, for sure.
I do know we have the summer study going on the methodology of that, and I've heard several times the sales tax part of it, some of the details on it. I think Mr. Goodwin was the one that had brought that up, and another person,
Yep.
and quite frankly, at a public meeting, a resident brought up sales tax. He felt it was the fairest portion of taxation if it reduced down his property taxes.
Correct.
I mean, that was one of the statements I'm just passing on. So how that would work, I don't know. I mean, if a resolution of support of a property tax reduction with a sales tax somehow, I don't know how that would look. I haven't seen anything proposed, just heard.
When's our deadline to have a proposal?
They are due to the state association by July 31st. They would need to be considered by the district at their meeting, and I believe that's July 17th. So for us, it would be the next meeting to be able to approve that, to get it to the district in time. So we can certainly work on something to bring back to the board to present at the 18th meeting.
Okay.
Sure.
If that's something the board's interested in. I've seen several that, basically are kind of a generic request to look at revenue sources for counties to be able to reduce that property tax burden by having a source of revenue other than simple property taxes. So we could maybe write it from that direction, if that's something the board's interested in.
I mean, I'd be interested in at least seeing what you have, and then I will continue to visit with Representative Goodwin. I don't know if he has another race, and I don't know if there's a Democrat challenger, but I know he asked me to work with him on it for this upcoming legislative session, so I can take what you have, reach out to him and start working on what he and I have been working on as well. So I would appreciate that, and then maybe I can come up with something unless somebody's got something else that they're going to work on this particular piece.
Mr. Chair.
I got Deb next, and then I'll hit.
Thank you. So, I always said, if you want to do a summer study, just get Shannon Rittberger there on property taxes. If they just take his advice and they just listen to what he's saying, he's very smart about taxes. He's very smart about property taxes. Every legislator this year that came up to me, anybody that came up to me, I sent him, go to Shannon. Okay, Shannon's going, geez, Deb's saying something nice. I love Shannon Rittberger, but I'll just say, I learned, I've been here a long time, it's how much money you spend on your budgets. So you can put it anywhere you want, and you could say, and you can do a study, it's budgets. If you don't reduce your budgets, April 2nd, and there was another time too, like twice this year, he kept saying, reduce your budgets. Your levy can do whatever, you can play the game on all of it, but you gotta reduce the budgets, otherwise you're gonna increase the property taxes. There's no game. So, solution is 51%, Miss Holly, that are jail, all of the facilities that have to do with the court systems, all of that stuff. Do an alcohol tax. Do a tax that actually reduces that area. So then it reduces and helps the county with their budget, and hopefully the property taxes, it's not going to kill them off with the property taxes. The sales tax is not sustainable. When sales tax goes down, I took a class with Shannon Rittberger, believe it or not. He kept saying, the guy that was running the class, it wasn't Shannon, it was actually a guy that was very, very good. He said, property taxes have been here since 1936. It's not the reduction of property taxes, it's the reduction of budgets. Number two, if you're going to do it, don't do sales tax, because a lot of states have been bankrupt because he relied just on sales tax. So between the two, maybe there's a solution, I don't know. But I keep saying the alcohol and the things that are causing the issues for Pennington County's budgets, in 51% of our budget is alcohol, drugs, and those areas in law enforcement. So doesn't it make more sense to try to find a tax through alcohol or somewhere through the state where they would give us something in that area? Since they keep turning us down for sales tax, no offense, let them keep it. It's not sustainable if something happens. But alcohol tax, no offense, I hate to say this, but even during depression and recession, it keeps level. So that's 101 tax stuff. So anything, Holly, I don't know if we can look up something that would put forth in some area alcohol tax or how they do that kind of process for that tax. I think it would be smart for the counties, especially for Pennington County for such a big area. And that summer study, hopefully, we can bring that forward and say, this is where it's going to help us. We got fees and everything else besides property taxes, but those jails in that area and that, it could use some big help. And if we can reduce it there, holy cow, it'd be huge. So just food for thought. For me, I've listened to people smarter than me and took classes on it. And again, Shannon, 101 dummies, cut your budgets or find a different area to try to help sustain it. So just something, I don't know if we can look it up or if you want me to work with you, Holly, I don't mind. If you need me to look up some stuff, because if you need it by, what'd you say, July 31st?
It would be for the next
18th.
board meeting.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I can respond, the counties have in the past attempted to do a liquor tax. So we definitely have resources. We've got examples of when it was tried to be done last time. So we can certainly prepare a resolution and try and move that forward again. Mr. Drews might be able to correct me. The legislation did pass this year, correct, to change the percentage of the alcohol tax percent?
Correct.
So the counties will be receiving a little bit additional
Yep.
share in alcohol for 2025.
I talked to
So that's
Dibert.
been a
Yep.
success in that area too, but it would definitely be a bigger impact for a liquor tax.
And we also are getting some county people that were county commissioners and stuff before. I talked to Dibert about some of this as well. And some of the summer study people, but maybe they need to put that in their brain instead of, if they want to reduce property taxes and help our county or our counties, it's going to be through that. And it makes more sense, and the taxpayers aren't going to go, oh, that's just horrible. You're using the alcohol tax to fund the jails that's causing the issues. That's just going to be horrible. Do you see what I'm saying? Where we do the sales tax, and that's a little bit different. You're just increasing our taxes, blah, blah, blah. I know a lot of times the tourism industry helps us in that area, but I'm just saying, what if that goes down? We want somewhere sustainable for our county that's going to be smart for the future. But thank you, and Holly, anything you can send me on that, please, if you would, on that liquor tax. I would like to help if I could. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Roskinek.
I guess the point I was going to make, you get 3-4 million people that visit the Black Hills area. They use our infrastructure. There should be, to me, some type of a tax on consumable items so that they pay their fair share for using our infrastructure. And also, maybe we should support an alternative method of funding the school districts. One of my properties, 65 cents out of a dollar goes to the school district, and I don't have any kids in school. I think, don't know what the answer is, but a different funding mechanism for the support in the school districts in the state of South Dakota, I think that would be well warranted.
So Holly, you got a good idea?
I guess to me, my marching orders are one resolution specifically for the liquor alcohol tax, and then more of a generic resolution for looking at all revenue sources for counties to be able to reduce that property tax burden.
Okay.
I believe, Mr. Chair, I believe the alcohol liquor tax brings in about 18 million total. 9 million of that now, as of July 1, would be to the counties, I believe.
And I apologize, I do not remember the increased dollar amount off the top of my head of what Pennington County would realize over and above what we typically do. I can certainly get that number for the board, so you guys are aware of what our new amount would be.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on our agenda is budget preparation.
More budget prep info. Another opportunity for the board to give direction on any information they want to have provided to them during the budget preparation. I will let the board know that the typical spreadsheet that you guys normally receive, I have been working on it and tweaking it a little bit, so you'll get some additional information percentage-wise that you haven't in the past. We are definitely going to have everybody separate out concourse expenses if there are any anticipated for the departments that will be relocating out there. As Director Bancroft said before, the compensation committee is working on providing guidance for preparing the wage personnel section. The Healthcare Trust Board has voted to implement a 4% premium increase for both the employee side and the county side in 2025, and we'll continue to look at that to see if that's the right decision that they want to continue with throughout the year. Just wanted to see if there's any other information that the board is seeking out specifically in when we meet with the department heads next week and getting budgets prepared.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lassner.
I would like to know, and I hope I ask it the right way. I know everyone budgets for positions, which you should budget for positions, staff members that you might hire if you have open staff positions. But I'd like to know what part of their budget piece, if they have 6 positions open, I'd like to know what that realized cost would be in their budget. But I'd also like to know how long they've had positions open. So some of the positions, we may have a department that's had 6 open positions, but over the time that I've been here, 3 of them have consistently been non-used. And so I think that's important information when we're coming to our final budget, because while it's a cushion, it's a cushion. It tends to give extra money when there's something that happens. So I want to know what those numbers are. Did I ask it right? You kind of got an idea what I'm thinking of.
Understand what you're seeking.
Okay.
I guess the other thing, Mr. Chair, I'd like to add is, Commissioner Hancock, you're absolutely right. This is the first time in my 15 years being here that we have asked to push budget hearings back 2 weeks. Typically, they're at the end of June. There's conflict with State Association Executive Board and the Compensation Committee needing more time. So this will be the first year that we've asked to push them back into July. The tentative timeline right now is to ask the departments to have them due to Cindy, our auditor, by the 21st of June. Gives them about, I think it's 5 or 6 working days to be able to get those compiled. Cindy then needs about 2 weeks to put together everything, to estimate reserves for you, cash applied, all of those details. And then I plan on having those books ready to go for the commissioners by July 1st, so that you have from the 1st to the 8th, when we walk into budget hearings, to review. We want you to have time to look at everything, because you're right, those books are huge and they're detailed and it's important. But provisional is always due the end of July. Commissioners need to approve something to be able to get us going and keep us moving forward. But then additional work on the budgets will certainly continue between July, August, and September, have to be finalized by the end of September.
So Chair.
A lot of opportunity to make changes. Departments, all of our leadership knows we're going to go through several different versions to get to the end result of what the commissioners can support.
All right, thank you. Ms. Hancock.
Ms. Holly, and it's going to be hard to give you directives until we see the numbers.
Yeah.
So and that by the time we look at it, those directive, and people are like, why didn't you tell us then? Well, we don't know your budgets yet. I can go by what we've had before, but it's going to be a little bit different with some of the stuff that we've done this year. So it's not that I'm not saying, I'm going to go out on say, okay, this is wrong, What I'm saying is I won't know until then, and then people already know. I'm asking the questions not because you did something wrong, it's because I'm trying to figure out what you did and how you got there. So, and I'll meet with some of the department heads ahead of time. If there's some big areas or some interests that I have, I will try to meet with them ahead of time. If not, like you said, we have time, and I will be up straight and say, you know, I'm gonna come visit you because I don't really understand this, some of it, and others, well, we'll see the numbers. So, thank you for your work on this, Holly.
I tend to agree on that. It's hard for me to give direction without seeing some of the numbers of what to work with, because then I have to look at the budgets too. So I think we got ample time to do that, and once we get the books and do some analyzing where we need to be and want to be is gonna make the directions sense. So
Today's purposes are basically the step one, to be able to give some direction to the department heads to prepare their budgets. I'll send out the instructions and the forms this afternoon. I've been taking a lot of notes on what I believe the board wants to ultimately see and what direction they want to go. So for today's purposes, the motion that I'm requesting of the board is move to support the initial 2025 provisional budget preparation for the personnel section at the guidance of the compensation committee to support the 4% healthcare premium increase and to prepare operations in a conservative and physically responsible manner.
So move.
moved by Drews,
Second.
second by Hadcock. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Next item is items from the public, and I don't have any speaker request forms at this point in time. So I would look for a motion to recess for about 10 minutes to let planning set up.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Laster, second by Hadcock. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, I'd look for a motion to come out of recess.
So moved.
Moved by Travis, second by Hadcock. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Laster.
move to go into Board of Adjustment.
Move to go to board adjustments. Seconded by
Yep.
Ms. Hadcock. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. That brings us to the first hearing on Board of Adjustment. Cody.
Cody Sack, environmental planner. Item A is variance COVA 24-0003 to allow a detached structure or garage to be located in the front yard on a lot consisting less than 1 acre in size. The applicant and landowner is Michael and Jill Allen. Staff is recommending to continue variance COVA 24-0003 to the June 18th, 2024 Board of Adjustment meeting, as the request was not properly advertised in one of the newspapers.
Make a motion that we continue.
Second.
Moved by Drews, seconded by Lassiter to continue. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I'd look for a motion to adjourn from the Board of Adjustment.
So moved.
Moved by Lassiter,
Second.
seconded by Hadcock. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, we have our regular agenda items. The following planning and zoning matters in our uncontested hearings are those which the planning department has not yet received or provided comment contrasting the item. The documents for each item have been reviewed by the commissioners, and the decisions during these hearings will be made based on the information provided in the packet and a short presentation. If we receive comment contesting the item, the matter will be addressed in the same manner as contested hearing. So next, that brings us to item B. Jason.
Morning, Commissioners. Jason Thennison, Assistant Planning Director. Agenda item B is conditional use permit COCU 24-0014 to allow recreational vehicle park and overnight equine boarding facility on the subject property. The applicant is Share LLC. The agent is Laney Shearer. Location of the property is 19548 239th Street. It is 47.63 acres, currently zoned agriculture district. Access is off 239th Street, and there's no special flood hazard area on the property. There are 7 criteria. The commission may consider in reviewing conditional use permit applications. They're on the screen. You can see number 4 is identified as no. The proposed on-site wastewater treatment system that they had were holding tanks. That doesn't meet our requirements, so they're going to have to work through that moving forward, and that is addressed as a condition of approval. This is a site plan layout of the property. They do currently have an indoor riding arena on the property. You can see that outlined in red. The 28 RV spots are going to be to the south of that. And I do have some site visit photos. So again, this would be the facility that was outlined in red. RV spots would be in front of that. This is another view of that building. This would be the entrance onto the property. Again, the 28 vehicles, RV spots would be just south of that. And one last photo. This is I-90. You can see the exit ramp and the entrance ramp onto I-90. 239th is paved up to this cattle guard. They would take access. County Highway did have some comments saying that they're going to monitor the condition of that road, and future improvements may be required. And they're also going to require a commercial entrance for the approach off of 239th. County addressing coordinator and the environmental planner both had concerns that are addressed as conditions of approval as well. With that, staff recommends approval of conditional use permit COCU 24-0014 with conditions.
Chair.
Ms. Hadcock.
Move to approve COCU 24-0014 with 18 conditions.
Second.
Moved by Hadcock, seconded by Lassiter. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Drews.
I know the applicants are here, but this went through the planning commission. There were several questions asked if they wanted to do something a little bit different to help them out. They pretty much wanted to stay with what's being recommended here, so
Okay.
I think it's a good move.
Okay. We do have a motion on the floor for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you for your patience.
Item C.
Quick second from our planner. Item C is vacation of section line right away, COVS 24-0001. It's to vacate approximately 1,126 feet of a section line right away. The applicant and landowner is Morris and Brian Evans. Staff is recommending to continue vacation of section line right away, COVS 24-0001 to the June 18th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting, as the request was not properly advertised in the newspaper. And to clarify that, we sent the advertisement to the paper, they just failed to put it in the paper. So that's why it wasn't advertised.
Motion, sorry, Board.
Ms. Hadcock.
Move to continue COVS 24-001 to the June 18, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting. Request was not properly advertised in one of the legal newspapers.
Second.
Moved by Hadcock, seconded by Drews. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. That brings us up to items from chair and commission members.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'm going to read this real quick then. Items from chair and commission members is a time for individual members to bring forth ideas or concerns to the full board. Official action will not be taken on any items brought forth at this time. Direction may be given to bring items back before the board for future consideration. Mr. Laster.
Actually, I just realized, I told you I was going to give a report in mine on the PFAS from the guard and the thing. So it doesn't fit in here anymore. It fits with me in my time frame. So I
In your
apologize.
report? Okay. With that, I would move on to meetings and committee reports. Travis Laster.
There we go. All right, so I was unable to go to the Complete Health Board. I had a scheduling conflict with that one. We got the building presentation, the building committee meeting. We had the presentation today, so that was pretty much what we talked about there. Extension Advisory Board meeting, pretty much a lot of work in that meeting was all budget work. So they're getting their budget finalized and getting it ready to be submitted so they can meet their deadlines. Outside of that, I met with the guard. They approached me after the base recommended that they visit with me on how to approach the community based on what we've been doing here from the county, hosting the town halls and things of that nature. We had really good discussion. Not to not to talk about anything out of line, but I think at this moment in time, they're going to finish their RI, and then they're probably going to have smaller meetings locally because it may not impact as many people as they thought that it was going to be. And since it's a different type of impact than what the base was, it may be more, it was, in our discussion, we advised it's probably be better to have a smaller type of community-involved meeting, either at the airport, at the guard base, or something of that nature. So unless something changes, I'll keep you guys informed and then go from there. As far as the hand count evaluation down in Fall River County, it was a good way to, it was a good opportunity to sit there and observe the whole process. I know that's the audit plan is for hand count. There was some disorganization down there. There was some confusion. There were some good things and bad things that I saw as far as processes. I talked to Cindy this morning to kind of give her my overview of down there, what I thought was good and what was bad, because I know we're fixing to be dealing with the audit piece of it as well. And I'll be talking to her more about that. But if there's any specific questions on the hand count that you might have, I'd be willing to answer them. Because I know there's been a lot of people talking about that, and there's been a lot of promotion of it in different areas or by different groups, and so I didn't see anything that was good or majorly bad with it. Just if you're going to do a hand count, there needs to be a lot of preparation ahead of time.
Thank you, Travis. Mr. Drews.
So Elevate Board of Directors, Elevate's got a lot of things going on with the various areas. Housing continues to be a prime concern to them of trying to meet the needs and demands that we have for housing. Good meeting, good reports that were provided. Planning Commission, we've taken care of that in previous business today. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Mr. Drews. Ron Roskinek.
On the 28th, we had the building committee, and the gist of that committee was basically the presentation that we saw today. On the 28th, later that day, Deb and I attended Getting By graduation, which was held at Love Inc. And there was 6 graduates that were recognized that evening. And then also there was a supper as well. 29th, we had the Fire Service Board, and basically Carol went over the wage presentation to those in attendance. On the 30th, Commissioner LaCroix and myself met with Mayor Larson and Mayor Solomon and just hashed over items pertaining to the county and their 2 communities. And on the 3rd, Black Hills Council of Local Governments, there again, we met in executive session. We just discussed wage study that Jennifer presented, and they wanted to, evidently, West River business, they wanted Jennifer to go into a different type of accounting, and we just voted to keep things the way they are. And that's all I got.
Thanks, Ron. Deb?
So the Healthcare Trust Board, I really like Carnetta from the Wellmark Insurance, very smart lady, very, very smart. We're going to do some surveying with the employees on some of the areas that we're looking into at this time. I won't say exactly what that is because we're trying to figure out what we're putting on those surveys to get the best results, but there were some good suggestions there. Some of the single family, some of that different areas maybe that Carletta can bring back for us in those areas that might give them more options. And then also the Getting By graduation, I knew Roberta and Linda, some of the people that were graduating from Love Inc., people were very kind. I like going to that because it's real. The food was very good. The people, what they were learning about poverty and the different areas of that maybe grew up with money and needed to see the other side of the issue. So, and then some of them that actually work in that area and have worked in that area, like my friend Roberta, who gave him some better suggestions. So that was very nice, and was nice visiting with Alan Solano and some of the people that were there that day. Pat Roseland was there as well, just seeing how the city's doing, how Alan Solano's doing with Vukovich. So good information that I learned there. But it was
Thank you. I wasn't able to make the complete health board meeting either, and I was a day off on the compensation meeting. So I wasn't able to make that one either. But I did have a 2-day meeting with Crazy Horse Memorial Foundation, and the regular board meeting with that was pretty much a full day one, going over capital improvements and what the foundation plans on doing at the mountain, and the improvements for the museum that they're planning on hiring an executive for the museum to try to get that up to standard and work on some of those types of stuff. But the other big part was the day before was it was just before the Volks March. So what they're doing is creating a walking path, educational path all the way up to the mountain with historical markers of what happened when and where and so forth. And then it'll be a private tour, and they're hopefully to start that up at the 1st of July, starting to do that. So there's some magnificent changes happening. A crane will be coming probably in August, probably one of the biggest ones we've ever seen. Definitely in South Dakota, but it's going to be able to go completely around the mountain. And some of the machinery that they're going to have it's going to be able to create the work that they need to do. As they said, they can do up to 250 square feet of work on the monument per day, which is extraordinary when you figure, if I remember the correct words, it would take them over 3 months before to do that type of finish work. So, once they get it figured out, they'll be able to do 3 sets of this at a time, and probably when they end the day of the work, they can set the machine to do some of the work, the finishing work, and not have to man it. That was some of the concepts. It's all still new. They got to train people to run the machinery and so forth, but it's pretty amazing. I can tell you this, their goal is by the time the 100th anniversary comes down, they want the monument done. So within our lifetime, we could see it done. So that's all I got to report. We have no executive session, so I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Drews, second by Oster. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.